Baking a Better Community is amazed at the final product.
Last month, we told you about Dorian D. Max Pillsbury, a 12-year-old boy who wanted to give back for his birthday. In September, he began collecting donations of cake mix, frosting, and candles to donate to food pantries around the state.
He says his goal of collecting supplies for 100 birthdays was completely blown out of the water. The fundraiser ended today, and D-Max estimates the donated goods can celebrate 300 birthdays.
Penobscot Theater Company was one of the local partners who spread the word about the fundraiser during their run of the aptly named play Birthday Candles. D-Max says little moments like enjoying birthday cake are often overlooked but can make a huge impact.
And that birthday cake could make their birthday, could make their day, could make their week. So you never know. A birthday cake cost could mean a lot more than that.
Really appreciate the work of this pretty remarkable young man, and I think anything that we can do to lift each other up is really fantastic and supportive of the community. It's what I think the theater is about, but I also think it's what this greater community is about.
D-Max has hosted an annual fundraiser for about 5 years to help support his community and beyond.
He hopes other kids will follow his recipe and lend a helping hand to their community as well.